All right, Tommy. So I want to talk about Klint Kubiak. He was introduced to the press a couple of days ago, last week actually, and he talked about his philosophy. He said he wants a tough football team, a tough offense, and he talked about the offensive line. He said, toughness is something you're born with. You can't just develop toughness, and we're going to seek that out in free agency. He talked about seeking out toughness in the draft, and he said he wants players that can play hurt, can practice hurt, and kind of players that have that edge to them. So, first of all, what did you think about his comments, and do you think his scheme can help the offensive line? Because I've seen it with San Francisco, man. They don't have like other than Trent Williams, man. They don't have world beaters out there, and they're competing every year. They're getting like 1,000 yard rushes out of their second string and third string and running backs. So. What do you think about his philosophy, his scheme, and can his scheme help the offensive line perform better?
Yeah, I mean, so with Kubiak's scheme, when everything he said, let's start with the conference. Everything he said there, you gotta love. It's music to my ears. We want physical. We want hard nosed. We want tough guys. We want to be a tough offense. We want to be a physical offense that, wear down the defense, long drives, tire them out, break them down as the game goes on, then turn around and allow our really good defense to shut down their offense and then go back and do the same thing. Eventually, teams just are going to check out and not want to be a part of that. And so, yeah, that sounds great. That sounds great. I love that. Like, I hope that that's what we're seeing this year. But yeah, I do think his scheme is, um, you know, what he said is what his scheme is. We've got to be able to run the football. That is a necessity. That's a requirement in this scheme. If you can't run the football, the scheme will not work. And I think everyone is aware of that. And they're going to hopefully address what needs to be addressed to make sure the scheme can go as it should. But yeah, I think it is, with what we saw with Kubiak, yes. I think that's exactly what this team needs. I do. I think that it can help the offensive line, but I also think that we're still going to need, offensive line, right? Like it's not
Yeah,
just
Jimmy's and Joe's over the X and
exactly,
O's.
exactly. So I think it was a great hire, and I think that fits exactly what we want and what we need. We just need to make sure that we've got the personnel to do it. It's a players' league. It's a players' league. It is scheme, it is coaching, but it is also a players' league, and we need the players to do it.
Yeah, I also heard about I heard on the radio show. So Daniel Jeremiah from NFL Network was on the radio show, and he was talking about how in this draft there's not many blue chip players. So he was talking about how the 18th pick and the 40th pick are the same talent players. So just talk about that. And does it make sense for the Seahawks to trade back down and get more offensive linemen in the second round and third round?
Yeah, I think it all depends on how the draft board's falling. This is a very defensive strong draft. So I envision that there will be quite an early defensive run. Like last year, there wasn't much. It was a quick offensive run. I think this year will be more of a defensive run. So if you're going to draft night, the goal in mind of I always BPA at valuable positions, but if you're going in in mind like okay, like we really need to address the interior offensive line, and I don't think that's exactly how Seattle is going to go into draft night. Like they are going to continue to look be best player available, and but if we're seeing a big defensive run, then yeah, absolutely, because all your prospects are falling. You know, they're all falling they're falling down the board. Teams are going to be trading up for defensive players because of how the defensive players are coming off the board. So yeah, and I agree with Daniel Jeremiah. Daniel Jeremiah is one of probably my favorite draft analysts. I respect his opinion above basically anyone else's. I think he does a great job. And he's completely right. I think that has been the consensus talk is, there's not a ton of blue chip and there is a wide window in that second tier of players. See, I wouldn't mind seeing Seattle trade back and continue to get more picks and more picks and cast a wider net in this draft and try to add as many quality players as they can.
Do you think the Seattle has the opportunity to reunite Pete Carroll with some of his defensive players, like Uchenna Nwosu and some of the players that he worked with for a second round pick or a third round pick?
Second or third, probably not. And I don't know if the Raiders are really in the market right now just to be trading draft capital away for, good, not great, maybe average veterans. I don't think that. I mean, I could be wrong. I just don't know if that's a efficient philosophy for the Raiders to come into this offseason with, and especially if they can get bargain guys kind of in that same tier in free agency for a low price to fill out the roster on 1 to 2 year deals. So I think that's how I kind of see the Raiders going about this offseason. So I don't necessarily envision Seattle just wheeling dealing some of their guys to get some extra picks. Just I wish it was that easy, but I don't really envision that.
Yeah. So going back to Clint Kubiak a little bit, um, do you feel like this was a gotta have it higher for them? Like they weren't gonna mess around or take any risk with other coaches who could be more, I don't know, unknown. They wanted a guy who was gonna come in who believed in his philosophy and who was gonna run his philosophy no matter what. Like somebody who was more stubborn on running the ball.
Yeah, I think so because last when we hired Ryan Grubb, I think that was more of a let's shoot for the moon hire and see what happens. This year, it's with how bad the offensive was last year. It can't be that they needed to hit on this. It held us back too much last season, and Mike McDonald's coaching for his job. If you don't win, you're going to get fired. And this is not to say Mike McDonald did a bad job last year. We won 10 games, but I do think that we all saw it, and you can't they knew that they couldn't miss on this hire this year because then there'll start to be questions on is can Mike be the guy with the lack of offensive output coming in every year, or so I think they had to have this right. I think they went the safer pick, a higher floor kind of candidate, and I don't hate it. I don't hate it because with how our defense plays, we don't necessarily need this insane high flying offense. We just need something honest that's going to be able to break a defense down, control the time of possession, and make it easy on our quarterback.
Yeah, it looks like he kept most of the offensive, assistant coaches. He just changed the quarterback and the offensive line coach. That's it, man. I think he kept everybody else. He kept Jake Peets, the passing coordinator, Kennedy Palomalo, the running backs coach. He kept mostly everybody, man.
Yeah, and I think he got his core guys, offensive line and quarterback, which are obviously important positions in his scheme, which I liked. I liked him bringing those over because he knows them and trusts them. But yeah, I don't think there were any other glaring coaching issues this year outside of that. We just need to be able to run the ball, which I'm telling you, if we can just run the ball consistently and respectfully, it'll open everything up.